All right, today we're jumping into the deep end with one of the most brilliant and, let's be honest, one of the most notoriously difficult thinkers out there, Jacques Lacan. He basically looked at Sigmund Freud's map of the human mind and decided to completely rewrite the entire operating system.
To really get Lacan, you have to start with the same question that obsessed Freud. What is the unconscious? You know, that hidden, mysterious part of us that's secretly running the show, driving our desires, our fears, our dreams. What's the deal with it?
Now, Freud's answer was pretty much all about biology. For him, the unconscious was this dark, primal pit of instincts and biological drives. But Lacan comes along and says, whoa, hold on, you're looking in completely the wrong place. He argued that the unconscious isn't some chaotic biological soup. Nope, it's a system, a beautifully complex and ordered system built out of one thing, language.
So here's the game plan for this explainer. We're going to break down this huge idea. We'll look at how Lacan thought he fixed a problem in Freud's work. Then we'll see how our very sense of I gets created. In a mirror, we'll map out the 3 different worlds we all live in at the same time, learn the secret grammar our unconscious uses to speak, and then see it all play out in a classic detective story. And finally, we'll get to why this idea completely changes how we think about, well, everything. Okay, let's dive right in. You got to understand, by the middle of the 20th century, psychoanalysis was starting to feel a little old, kind of stuck in these outdated biological ideas. Lacan's big mission was to bring it into the modern world, to save it by connecting it with the most powerful intellectual movement of his day, structuralism and linguistics.
And this right here is his central claim. This is the master key that unlocks his entire way of thinking. And you have to get this. He wasn't being poetic. He meant it literally. The unconscious doesn't just resemble the language, it operates exactly like one, with its own rules, its own grammar, its own way of making meaning.
So if our mind is built like a language, where does it all start? I mean, where does that first and most important word we ever learn, the word I, even come from? Well, Lacan has a pretty fascinating origin story for us.
He calls it the mirror stage. Just try to imagine being a baby. You don't feel like a whole person. You feel like this chaotic mess of arms and legs you can't quite control. It's what he calls the fragmented body. But then, one day, you see your reflection, and for the very first time, you see a complete, unified image. And in this incredible moment of joy and recognition, your brain goes, hey, that whole thing, that's me. And boom, in that exact instant, your ego, your sense of I, is born. But notice, it's born from an image that's outside of yourself.
And this is the absolutely crucial part. Our ego, the very foundation of who we think we are, is built on what Lacan calls méconnaissance, a fundamental misrecognition. We identify with something that isn't really us, it's just a reflection. So that solid sense of I that we all have, it's kind of a fiction. It's like a suit of armor we build to feel whole and in control, to protect ourselves from that deep-down feeling of chaos. But it's not the real you.
So now that we've got this ego, this kind of fragile I, what kind of world does it actually live in? Well, for Lacan, it's not just one world. He maps our mind across 3 different overlapping realms.
First up is the imaginary. This is the world of the mirror stage we just talked about. It's all about images, fantasies, and these simple one-to-one relationships, like me versus you. Then we enter the symbolic. This happens when we learn language. This is the big, shared world of rules, laws, and social structures. Everything from traffic lights to family trees. And then there's the really weird one, the real.
Now, the real is not reality as we normally think of it. It's the raw, unstructured stuff of existence that language just can't ever fully capture. Here's the best way to think about it. Imagine you accidentally smash your thumb with a hammer. For that split second, before you can even think, there's just this blinding, speechless flash of pure pain. That is the real. The moment you scream, ouch, or think, that hurts, you've already pulled the experience into language, into the symbolic. The real is what always escapes our net of words.
Okay, so we've got this unconscious that's structured like a language, and it operates in this symbolic world. So, how does it actually talk? What are its rules? What's its grammar?
This is where Lacan gets really clever. He takes Freud's original ideas and translates them into linguistics, what Freud called condensation in dreams, where one image packs in a ton of different meanings. Lacan just calls a metaphor, but the one he's really interested in is what Freud called displacement. Lacan calls this metonymy.
This is where meaning just kind of slides along a chain of connected things, like when you say the White House announced instead of the president announced. That's metonymy. And for Lacan, this is exactly how our desire works.
And this is a huge deal. For Lacan, desire is metonymy. It's that feeling of constantly sliding from one thing to the next. You know how it is. You think you really want that new phone, but as soon as you get it, you're already thinking about the next vacation. You go on vacation and now you want a promotion. Desire is never, ever fully satisfied because we aren't really chasing the things themselves. We're just chasing the next word, the next sign, in a chain that never, ever ends.
I know, this can all feel pretty abstract, so let's ground it in a concrete example. Lacan does this amazing analysis of an Edgar Allan Poe detective story, The Purloined Letter, that shows his whole theory in action.
Lacan's take is wild. He says forget about the psychology of the characters. Forget their motivations. In fact, we never even find out what the stolen letter says. It's completely irrelevant. The whole point of the story, for him, is to show how this one object, this empty sign, the letter, actually controls and determines the actions of every single person who comes into contact with it.
So in the first scene, you've got this triangle of power. There's the king, who is in position 1. He's totally blind. He doesn't see the letter as there. Then there's the queen, position 2. She sees the letter, and she sees that the king is blind, which puts her in a tricky spot. And then there's the minister, position 3. He sees everything, the letter, the queen's panic, the king's ignorance, and he uses this total vision to just take the letter and gain power.
And here is where it gets so cool. Later in the story, the exact same structure repeats itself perfectly. Now the police are in position 1. They're blind, tearing the apartment apart but seeing nothing. The minister is in position 2. He sees how blind the police are and it makes him feel totally safe. And finally, the detective, Dupin, is in position 3. He sees the whole setup, the whole structure, and he easily retrieves the letter. The people change, but the positions, which are created by the letter, stay exactly the same.
So, after all that, the mirror, the 3 realms, the stolen letter, what is the big takeaway here? Why does looking at the world this way actually matter? It matters because it completely flips the script on how we analyze, well, pretty much anything. We stop asking questions about inner feelings and intentions, like, what did the author really mean here? Instead, we start asking a totally different question. How does the system of language itself function to produce these effects? It's a massive shift from individual psychology to an impersonal underlying structure.
And all of this leads us to Lacan's final, and probably his most profound and unsettling, lesson about what it means to be human.
We're left with this really mind-bending question. We all like to think that we're in control, right? That we use language as a tool to express our unique, authentic inner selves. But what if Lacan is right? What if it's the other way around? What if language is speaking us? What if we're just filling positions in a vast, ancient structure that was here long before we were and will be here long after we're gone?